Hi, my name is Shanley. I work at Google and I'm a people consultant. So in the outside industry, this would be called a human resource business partner. And I support our leaders and employees called Googlers in forming excellent HR experiences. HR analytics is such a broad term, and it's actually an extremely exciting time to be in human resource management. I mean, I think if we take a look at what analytics, or even beyond analytics, things like machine learning, or even further into the future around artificial intelligence, look at what data has done for some of the other traditional sectors that make up a business organization. So look at finance, sales, supply chain management, even marketing to a degree, and look at how business models have completely grown that wouldn't have existed prior, thanks to all this information and data. Let's look at the way we send out targeted ads, the way stock markets are utilized now with buying and selling shares through systems. There's no, in a lot of companies, there aren't people making those decisions anymore. It's an algorithm making those decisions. And I think human resources is a fascinating area that will catch up in this kind of revolution of making sure that data is involved in every point or big decision that may come across a department or a professional, for example. I think where it has a role within human resources is extremely focused on people. That may sound very high level, but it's about making sure that an organization optimizes its workplace situations, its workplace scenarios, its even the building in which people operate, to optimize for performance. We're in a world where human capital is now a very real term, in that people are willingly moving between companies all of the time because they have a set of skills that they want to enhance, or they want to try in a new industry, or try in a competitor, for example. HR has a responsibility to use data involved in kind of the traditional HR value proposition, like training and development, performance management, attrition, turnover, things like that, to say, okay, how do we holistically look at this and understand how our business can operate? So I think HR analytics will help the HR industry have more than a seat at the table, but become an extremely key influencer with how business decisions are actually made. We need to move away from things like a senior leader saying someone like, let's put together a team of people that we know are good, to let's find the best team available for this particular project that we're trying to achieve. Even a step before that, what do we need to work on as a business to help us get there? And I think HR analytics will help us get there. But again, what do we mean by HR analytics? We mean things like software platforms, or having data scientists involved with people. So things like team analysis, things like org breakdown structures, things like tenure mapping, level distributions amongst companies, and then optimizing for that type of performance. So what will it have in the future? It's going to completely change the traditional HR value proposition, in that it will enhance it greatly and allow HR to have a complete further, more impactful influence on how the business is shaped and run. Okay, so it's an extremely interesting scenario that we have here, and we want to call out that it's good that HR have been now asked to get involved in a situation like this, because it is about performance optimization. So if there are no clear major differences between the makeup of the people on the production line, although I still think we should look into that, we always need to take a healthy skepticism or a constructive pessimism to scenarios like this, in that understanding, again, holistically approach that data can take with these types of scenarios to help us come up to a decision. But let's park that there are no major differences between the people for a second, and then take a look at what the ask is. There are 3 production lines. One of them doesn't produce as well as the other 2 production lines. Why? Let's rule out production differences first off. Okay, so we have access to things like time, accident reports and defect reports. Okay, so let's take a look at what is the rate of accident reports on each of the production lines, what is the rate of defect reports on each of the production lines. Okay, so very simply, is one or two of the lines not creating or having as much accidents as defects as the poorly produced, or they're less kind of impactful production line? Once we have those results, it's very easy to make specific tailored measures that can help address this, right? Even within the time sphere, we can have access to things like, okay, how much time are employees spending working on the production line or behind the scenes that involve how the production line is run, for example. So we can come up with a huge amount of data from this alone, and it's important that we're not coming up with a hypothesis before looking at the data. If you torture data, it'll tell you anything. It'll come up with whatever you want it to tell you, but it's important that we take a holistic approach. That's why I was mentioning the things like the employee makeup. So let's say, for instance, it is actually defect reports, and there's a lot of kind of mistakes happening on the kind of less producing production line. What can we infer of that? What action do you take from that? You can't merely just say, stop making mistakes to a group of employees. So how do we actually go about this? Then we look at the more kind of detailed metrics that are available to us: training and development uptake, organizational satisfaction scores. How does this help us when we already know that the accident or the defect reports are really kind of the reasons for the disparity in the production? Well, by looking at the data holistically, we can look at things like, are the other two production lines more highly trained in terms of the internal company training? Is there kind of a greater report and uptake on training on those two lines than the line that hasn't? Is there, within the org satisfaction scores, are the line that aren't producing as well completely bought into what the company is trying to do, completely bought in what their job is, completely bought into the value that they bring to the company? By being able to take a very simple metric like there's a higher rate of defect on this production line, and tying it to this production line has a group of employees that are less skilled or qualified in terms of the own company internal standards, then you can go about taking actual proper action, making sure that there is training and development available, that it's useful, and that it's actually bought into, not by kind of a mandated, but helping the employees understand why it's important and why them getting upskilled will actually enhance their own performance, the company's performance, and then hopefully kind of improve their satisfaction with the company. So that's a very kind of simplistic outlook on cause and effect. But there could be loads of other reasons for this. There could be things like manager capabilities. So taking a look at org satisfaction scores. I know it's probably the same manager for all three production lines, but maybe team leads or team dynamics, and that's inherently more difficult to solve by just looking at very simple reports. So you could come up with a few hypotheses to test, like, okay, let's split the teams up, see is there any kind of differences between performance of the three teams. Let's move teams on the production lines. What if the problem is actually mechanical or process driven, and it's actually the production line that's at fault or something? And then you could do other things like, well, let's move a team lead every week. Or let's look at what week was our production at our absolute optimum. What was going on that week? What was happening the week prior? How much time was being spent on the production line? How many people were assembling on the production line at a time? And come up with this scenario allows us to achieve our optimum. Is this something that we can very successfully scale, have employees buy into, and have kind of high job satisfaction, creating a culture of performance? So in answer, there are lots of different ways and approaches that you can take for this. So lots of advice and lots of things to take into consideration. I think what we need to look at is that HR is a spectrum, right? And getting involved with very high level strategic influencing comes after maybe a few years of specialization in an area. So a lot of the kind of larger companies are splitting up their HR into, you know, recruitment, benefits and compensation is kind of a classic one. Organizational behavior specialists or consultant specialists that work with a bit more of the leaders, or even things like HR coordination, so doing more of kind of the tasks involved in the HR value proposition. I think if you are interested in working in kind of a larger company, find out what kind of interests you through your project work in university, or through if you have any chances to intern or do kind of cooperative education experiences. Find out what actually interests you and pursue maybe a specialization first. If you are kind of unsure and interested in kind of the wider spectrum, perhaps maybe looking at a smaller company might be for you, where you can kind of get involved in working on, you know, anything and everything that makes up HR in a kind of a more traditional sense. And then obviously making sure that you're keeping up with kind of industry standards, making sure that you're keeping an interest in the field. There's so many different areas that make up HR and different kind of reading materials available. So Harvard Business Review, and there's a huge amount of things and reading material available through your college. But I think really find out what interests you and find out why you want to be in HR. I think being in HR is a fascinating area because it's one of the few areas of any business that actually has a seat at the table in every sector of the business. Because key influencing decisions will always key influencing is always produced when people are involved. So decision making that involves people, that involves performance optimization, that involves org structure will always need human resource help and human resource influence and human resource guidance. So it's a fantastic area to work in, and it's definitely something that you should pursue if you are at all interested in people, influencing, productivity, and all that kind of fun stuff. That's a great question. So I think before I had started my career in HR, I would have probably liked to understand a bit better that there are those kind of massive silos in kind of larger companies, and this speaks more specifically to me. I think after I left university, I was very keen to go into employment where I was going to be working on everything and immediately involved in kind of strategic decision making. I think I had to learn and know that I had to be a bit more patient, and I had to be willing to get involved in loads of different projects going on in the company or the industry, or keep in touch with things that are going on. So I think reminding myself to be patient when I first started is a kind of a key one. The second one, I probably would have liked to try and understand a bit more about a day-to-day job that a kind of a HR professional has. Like universities are fantastic at forming kind of an understanding of the importance, the theory, the manifestation of how HR carries out. But I think I would have liked to actually, what does a 9 to 6 or an 8 to 6 or a 9 to 5, what does that actually look like? Who are you working with? Who is the most influential within a HR area? What kind of problems are people trying to solve? Is that reality to what we're learning day to day? That would have been pretty key to me. And then also I would have probably liked to learn a little bit more about the technical aspects that make up HR, or the financial implications that make up HR, because it's very important that we understand the timeliness of our decisions completely drive business results, right? So what I mean by that is, if HR wants to be completely viewed as a business leader, as an influencer within the organization, they have to be ready to move at the speed the business requires them to. Or key, they need to be able to help the business slow down where it needs to make sense. And I would have loved to understand, how does that actually happen in real life? Like, what happens when a HR professional pushes pause on something? And what is the cost and the effect on that?